The Toronto Blue Jays offseason just took a dramatic turn, and what we're learning behind closed doors is absolutely explosive. While fans have been celebrating the team's recent moves, insiders are now pulling back the curtain on clubhouse drama, front office feuds, and secret negotiations that could reshape the entire franchise. This isn't just about baseball anymore, folks. This is about power struggles, broken relationships, and million-dollar decisions that are tearing at the very fabric of Canada's team. Let's cut right to the chase, because what's emerging from the shadows is far juicier than anyone expected. The baseball world is buzzing after Ben Nicholson-Smith and Jeff Passan dropped some serious truth bombs that have Blue Jays Nation reeling. We're talking about covert meetings with star pitchers, tension so thick you could cut it with a knife, and revelations about why Bo Bichette really left Toronto that will make your jaw drop. The free agency period has been relatively successful for the Blue Jays on paper. They've made moves, signed players, and tried to convince fans that they're serious about winning. But beneath that polished exterior lurks a story of dysfunction, disagreement, and decisions that have left some wondering if the front office knows what it's doing. The truth is finally coming out, and it's messier than anyone imagined. Here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Jeff Passan, one of baseball's most connected insiders, was recently asked a simple question on social media about who's going to land Houston Astros ace Framber Valdez. Now, Passan could have given a generic non-answer, but instead, he opened up a can of worms that has everyone talking. He didn't just mention one or two teams, he laid out a scenario that sounds like something straight out of a sports thrill. According to Passan, if Valdez's situation plays out like Kyle Tucker's free agency did, meaning no compelling long-term offers materialize, it theoretically should open up more teams to jump into the bidding war. Baltimore is apparently the favorite because they desperately need a frontline starter. But here's where it gets spicy. Passan specifically mentioned Toronto, noting that the Blue Jays didn't get any of the big bats they desperately sought after in free agency. They still have money burning a hole in their pocket, and here's the kicker. They could slot Valdez in as the Kevin Gausman replacement after next year. Think about that for a second. The Blue Jays are already planning for life after Gausman, one of their most reliable starters. That's either brilliant forward thinking or a troubling sign that they know something we don't about Gausman's future with the team. Either way, it shows the front office is playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers, thinking multiple moves ahead even as they're trying to salvage the current roster. Ben Nicholson-Smith added even more fuel to this fire during a recent Ask Me Anything session on Reddit. When pressed about the Valdez rumors, Smith confirmed something that had been whispered about but never fully verified. The Blue Jays actually met with Framber Valdez at the general manager meetings before they signed Dylan Cease. Let that sink in. They were courting Valdez while publicly pursuing other targets. There was, according to Smith, some initial mutual interest between both sides at that time. But here's where the plot thickens. After the Jays signed Cease, you'd think the Valdez door would be closed, right? Wrong. Smith revealed that the Blue Jays have done extensive background work on Valdez, as you'd expect from a professional organization. They like his talent level. They've studied his game. They know what he brings to the table. But here's the catch for this reunion to actually happen. For the Blue Jays to swoop in and land this coveted left-hander, Valdez's market probably needs to stall out. Translation? The Blue Jays are lurking in the shadows, waiting like a predator for the perfect moment to strike. Every day that passes without Valdez signing somewhere else, Toronto's chances improve. It's a high-stakes game of chicken, and the Blue Jays are betting that other teams will blink first. If Valdez doesn't get the mega deal he's hoping for, if the market doesn't heat up the way his agent expects, guess who's waiting with open arms and a competitive offer? Your Toronto Blue Jays. Now, some of you might be thinking, why would the Blue Jays need another starter after signing Cease? Great question. On the surface, the rotation looks solid. You've got Gausman, Cease, Shane Bieber on a one-year deal, and some other pieces. But here's what the casual fan might not realize. Gausman's contract is expiring. Bieber is only on a one-year deal as he recovers from Tommy John surgery. There's a player or team option situation with another pitcher. The depth simply isn't there beyond this season, and the smart money says the front office knows it. This is where the Blue Jays strategy gets really interesting. Baseball analyst Keegan Matheson has appeared on multiple shows saying the same thing over and over. The Blue Jays like to do their work in advance. They don't wait until the last minute and scramble. They plan ahead, sometimes years in advance. If they're serious about solidifying the starting rotation not just for this year but for the next few seasons, going after Valdez makes perfect sense. It's not really about winning in the immediate future, though that would be nice. It's about setting up a rotation for the long haul. Imagine a future rotation featuring Dylan Cease as your ace, Framber Valdez as your number 2, maybe Trey Savage developing into a solid starter, and Cody Poteet filling in the gaps. If Shane Bieber recovers well from his Tommy John surgery, maybe you bring him back on a longer-term deal. Suddenly, you're not just competitive for one season, You're building a dynasty. That's the dream scenario the Blue Jays front office is chasing, and Valdez is a crucial piece of that puzzle. Let's talk about Valdez as a pitcher, because there's a reason he's generating this much buzz. The guy is damn good, plain and simple. Now, he's not worth hundreds of millions of dollars. His peripherals aren't elite enough to command that kind of money. But what Valdez brings to the table is reliability and innings eaters. In today's game, where starting pitchers are babied and pitch counts are monitored like nuclear codes, Valdez is old school. He goes deep into games, he eats innings, he gives your bullpen a break. That's incredibly valuable, especially over the course of a grueling season. The question everyone's asking is whether Valdez would fit in the Blue Jays clubhouse. This is where things get uncomfortable, because we need to talk about the elephant in the room, the clubhouse chemistry issues that have been bubbling beneath the surface for years. Would adding another strong personality mesh with what the Blue Jays have built, or would it create more friction? We'll circle back to that because the clubhouse drama is about to get even more explosive. But first, let's address the Bo Bichette situation, because this is where things go from interesting to absolutely scandalous. For months, there's been this underlying feeling, this quiet tension that something wasn't right between Bichette and the organization. Veteran baseball media personality Jeff Blair would hint at it on his show, never quite coming out and saying it directly, but dropping enough breadcrumbs that astute fans could read between the lines. The vibe was off. Bichette didn't seem happy with the overall direction of the team. Now that he's gone, traded to the New York Mets, the truth is finally emerging, and it's even messier than people suspected. During his Reddit AMA, Ben Nicholson-Smith was asked directly about whether the quiet tension with Bichette was real, and whether we'd learn more now that he's no longer a Blue Jay. Smith's response was revealing and a little bit sad. According to Smith, everyone's going to have their own interpretation of what happened. But here's his take. This is professional sports. The stakes are incredibly high. Millions of dollars are on the line. Careers are made and destroyed. In that pressure cooker environment, people get frustrated. Emotions run high. And yes, there was absolutely some tension between the front office and Bo Bichette. This wasn't just a personality clash. This was a fundamental disagreement about the direction of the player and the team. Smith didn't specify exactly what the disagreements were about, but there are some educated guesses we can make. Was it about the failed experiment of trying to move Bichette to second base? Was it about how the team handled his various injuries? Was it about the overall direction of the franchise and whether they were truly committed to winning? We may never know all the details, but what we do know is that the relationship had deteriorated to the point where both sides were probably relieved when the trade happened. What makes this even more interesting is that this kind of tension isn't new for the Blue Jays. Smith pointed out that Matt Chapman called out manager John Schneider years ago. There were issues with Alek Manoah and Marcus Semien. When you have a pattern of conflicts between players and management, you have to start asking whether this is just the nature of competitive sports or whether there's something systemically wrong with how the organization operates. Here's where Smith's analysis gets really nuanced and shows the complexity of professional sports. He noted that in competitive environments, disagreements happen. These relationships between players, coaches, and front office personnel last for years. People have bad days, bad seasons, frustrating moments. Typically, everyone moves on like adults. But here's the key. If a team is winning, that solves a lot of problems. Winning is the ultimate salve for wounded egos and bruised relationships. The Blue Jays haven't been winning enough, and that's when all the underlying tensions rise to the surface. When you're losing, every little disagreement becomes magnified. Every decision gets questioned. Every slight feels personal. Bichette had clearly moved on mentally before the trade happened. But here's something that might surprise you. Smith believes that Bichette legitimately wanted to stay in Toronto. He wasn't demanding a trade. He wasn't being a malcontent. He's a great player who probably would have remained a Blue Jay if the organization hadn't made one specific decision. That decision? Prioritizing Dylan Cease over Bo Bichette. When the Blue Jays went all in on Cease, committing the kind of money that probably could have gone to extending Bichette, they made a choice. They chose starting pitching over their young star shortstop. They chose the future of the rotation over keeping a homegrown talent who had been the face of the franchise. It was a calculated risk, and only time will tell if it pays off. Think about the domino effect of that decision. The money that went to Cease couldn't go to Bichette. Once Bichette realized he wasn't the priority, the relationship probably soured even further. The front office, knowing they couldn't afford both, decided to move Bichette while his value was still high. They ended up getting Kazuma Okamoto in a separate move, a Japanese slugger who represents a different kind of gamble. Instead of keeping the proven commodity in Bichette, they're betting on the unknown in Okamoto plus the stability of Cease in the rotation. Here's the question that should be keeping Blue Jays fans up at night. Would you rather have Bo Bichette on the team right now or Dylan Cease? If you could go back and make that decision, which path would you choose? The Blue Jays clearly believed that solidifying the aging rotation for years to come was more important than keeping Bichette. They prioritize Cease's ability to anchor the pitching staff over Bichette's offensive production and clubhouse presence. But there's another way to frame this question. Would you rather have Dylan Cease plus Kazuma Okamoto, or would you rather have just Bo Bichette plus some other theoretical starting pitcher? When you put it that way, the decision becomes more complex. Okamoto brings power and international flair. Cease brings stability and ace-level stuff. Together, they might represent more total value than Bichette alone, even if losing Bo hurts emotionally. What makes this even more fascinating is that there were other paths not taken. The Blue Jays reportedly went after Michael King hard, willing to offer him a 3-year, $75 million deal. If they had landed King at that price, maybe the math changes. Maybe they could have kept Bichette and still fortified the rotation. But King ultimately signed elsewhere, and the Blue Jays had to adjust their strategy on the fly. The snowball effect of these decisions is staggering. One move leads to another, which leads to another, and suddenly your entire roster looks completely different than it did 6 months ago. The Blue Jays are banking on the idea that their new configuration, Cease anchoring the rotation, Okamoto providing thump in the lineup, and whatever other moves they make, will be better than what they had with Bichette. Now, if you thought the Bichette drama was the end of the clubhouse dysfunction stories, buckle up because we're just getting started. Ben Nicholson-Smith dropped another bombshell during his AMA, this time about Jose Berrios, and it's the kind of revelation that makes you question everything you thought you knew about the team. Remember during the World Series when Berrios was notably absent from certain team activities? At the time, media members were told it was for family reasons. That's the standard line you give when a player needs personal time, and nobody thinks twice about it. Family comes first, everyone understands, and the story moves on. Except, that wasn't actually the truth. According to Smith, the real story is far more dramatic. Berrios' absence wasn't about family obligations. It was actually a decision made by Berrios himself, essentially a choice to separate himself from team activities. The exact reasons weren't specified, but the implication is clear. Berrios was making a statement. He was unhappy about something, frustrated with someone or some situation, and he decided the best course of action was to remove himself from the equation. Now here's where it gets really uncomfortable. There's apparently frustration within the organization about how Berrios handled this. They're not happy that he went rogue. They're not thrilled that he made a unilateral decision that affected team chemistry and preparation. And most importantly, according to Smith, it'll be on Jose Berrios to rekindle that relationship. Translation? The ball is in Berrios' court to make amends, to repair the damage, to show that he's committed to being a team player moving forward. This is massive because Berrios is a significant piece of the pitching staff. When people talk about the Blue Jays rotation, his name should be right there with Gausman and Cease. He's talented, experienced, and capable of being a workhorse. But if there's a fractured relationship between Berrios and the organization, if trust has been broken, how does that affect his performance? How does that impact the clubhouse? Can you really count on a pitcher who's already shown he's willing to separate himself from the team when things get difficult? The timing of this revelation is particularly interesting given all the other drama swirling around the organization. You've got Bo Bichette leaving amid tension with the front office. You've got Berrios making solo decisions that angered management. You've got questions about whether adding someone like Framber Valdez would help or hurt the clubhouse chemistry. A pattern is emerging, and it's not a flattering one for the Blue Jays. It paints a picture of an organization struggling to manage personalities, struggling to keep everyone rowing in the same direction, struggling to create a culture where players feel valued and heard without undermining the authority of coaches and executives. That's a delicate balance in any workplace, but especially in professional sports where egos are massive and the pressure is relentless. Here's the thing about the starting rotation that makes the Framber Valdez pursuit even more critical. When you look at the current setup, it's great on paper, but it's also incredibly weird when you consider the future. Gausman is expiring, Bieber is a question mark coming off surgery, Berrios might need to repair his relationship with the organization. Suddenly, that rotation that looked so solid has more holes than Swiss cheese if you're thinking beyond just this season. That's why the Valdez situation is so intriguing. Outside of the clubhouse chemistry concerns, which are legitimate and serious, it makes all the sense in the world for Toronto to pursue him aggressively. He fills a need not just for now, but for the next several years. He provides stability in an uncertain situation. He's the kind of pitcher you can build around, even if he's not a true ace. But here's the million-dollar question, and it's one the Blue Jays front office has to be wrestling with right now. If you have existing clubhouse issues, if you have players who've already shown they're willing to buck the system or clash with management, do you really want to add another strong personality into that mix? Does Valdez make things better, or does he potentially make a bad situation worse? The safe play would be to pass on Valdez, focus on internal development, maybe find a lower-key veteran who won't rock the boat. But the Blue Jays haven't been playing it safe. They swung big on Dylan Cease, They made the tough call to move on from Bichette. They're showing a willingness to make bold decisions, even if those decisions come with risk. That's actually somewhat encouraging if you're a Blue Jays fan who's tired of mediocrity. You might not agree with every move the front office makes. You might think they handled the Bichette situation poorly, or that they should have been more transparent about the Berrios incident. But at least they're trying to build something. At least they're making moves with conviction rather than sitting on their hands and hoping things magically improve. The next few weeks are going to be absolutely crucial for determining where this franchise is headed. If Valdez's market does stall out like Passan suggested it might, the Blue Jays will have a decision to make. Do they pounce? Do they make the aggressive move and worry about clubhouse chemistry later? Or do they play it conservative, let Valdez sign elsewhere, and bet on internal development and maybe some smaller moves around the margins? Whatever they decide, it's clear that this offseason is about more than just wins and losses. It's about establishing an organizational identity. It's about determining what kind of culture they want to build. It's about deciding whether they're willing to tolerate strong personalities and occasional conflict in pursuit of championships, or whether they value harmony and cohesion, even if it means potentially sacrificing some talent. The truth is finally coming out about what's really been happening behind the scenes with the Blue Jays, and it's a complex, messy, thoroughly human story. There are no clear villains here. Bo Bichette wasn't wrong for wanting to stay and being frustrated when the team went in a different direction. The front office wasn't wrong for prioritizing what they believe gives them the best chance to win long-term. Jose Berrios presumably had his reasons for making the decision he made, even if the organization didn't appreciate how he handled it. What we're witnessing is the reality of professional sports, stripped of the PR spin and carefully crafted narratives. We're seeing the tension between individual desires and organizational goals. We're seeing how business decisions affect real people and real relationships. We're seeing that building a winning team is about so much more than just acquiring talent. It's about managing egos, building trust, creating buy-in, and sometimes making impossibly difficult choices with incomplete information. The Framber Valdez pursuit represents all of that complexity in one decision. He's a talented pitcher who could genuinely help the team win, but he's also a potential wild card in a clubhouse that's already shown some cracks. The Blue Jays have to weigh the on-field value against the off-field risk, and there's no easy answer. As fans, all we can do is watch this drama unfold and hope that the people making these decisions know something we don't. Hope that they've learned from past mistakes with Bichette and Berrios. Hope that they have a plan for integrating new personalities without destroying what's working. Hope that all this chaos and change is actually leading somewhere positive rather than just creating more dysfunction. The Blue Jays offseason has been a roller coaster, and we're not even close to the final drop. Between the Valdez negotiations, the fallout from the Bichette trade, the lingering questions about Berrios, and whatever other bombshells are waiting to drop, this story is far from over. Every day brings new revelations, new drama, new reasons to obsess over what's happening in Toronto. What do you think about all this chaos? Should the Blue Jays go all in on Framber Valdez despite the clubhouse concerns? Were they right to prioritize Dylan Cease over Bo Bichette, or was that a massive mistake that will haunt them for years? And what about Jose Berrios? Can he repair his relationship with the organization and be the pitcher they need him to be? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because